Hello, everyone. We had the honor of having Congressman Roger Williams on our podcast this week. We were able to sit down with him and talk a little bit about the ongoing impeachment inquiry in the House, talked a little bit about the ongoing problems at the border, the trade war with China, and spent a little time discussing his passion for baseball, his time as manager of the Republican congressional baseball team, and also spoke to him a little bit about his Thanksgiving traditions. We hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. It was a lot of fun for us, and we'll catch y'all next time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Texans podcast. My name is Drew White. I'm the senior editor here at the Texan, and today we have a very special guest. Representative Roger Williams is here with us, who represents the 25th Congressional District of Texas. We're going to be talking a lot about what's going on in D.C. We're going to be talking a lot about some of the policy issues that are going on up there, as well as, I think, probably a little bit of impeachment and the whole process there, and hopefully dive into some personal details, some fun questions with the Congressman. So we appreciate all of y'all tuning in. And Congressman, welcome.
Well, it's good to be here, Drew. Good to see you. Good to be able to talk about America.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. We know you have a very busy schedule, so we want to jump into this. Obviously, I think there's a lot of questions, both from what's going on in D.C. from an impeachment process, what's going on from a substantive policy process that I know our listeners and our readers are going to want to hear from you and hear your perspective on. Before we get into that, I'm just for folks that don't know, talk a little bit about your background. What sort of inspired you to run? You're in your fourth term right now. Yeah. What inspired you to run for Congress, and what's sort of your background for getting involved in politics?
Well, it's interesting. I grew up in Fort Worth, and I was all about baseball when I was growing up, and ended up playing ball at TC, and then playing with the Atlanta Braves for several years. I never ever said I wanted to be a congressman. It never entered my mind, but I always was engaged politically. I followed it. My parents were very political, so I remember Adlai Stevenson, Eisenhower back in 52 is how far I can go back. But as far as me getting involved, I was always selected, never elected to do things. As you may know, I was Governor Perry's Secretary of State. And I decided to run for Congress in 2012 because a lot of the people I was helping, with my money, my treasure, my sweat, they weren't doing what they told me to do when they got up to Washington. And I didn't feel like anybody was fighting for Main Street America. I didn't think anybody was fighting for small business. I've owned my own business for 50 years, my family 80 years. I'm a Main Street guy. So I decided I better run for Congress. So I jumped in with 13 people in a new district, District 25, and we ran on a pretty simple message: lower taxes, less government, cut spending, defend borders, listen to your generals, understand the 10th Amendment, and always stay with Israel. And we haven't gotten out of that since, and that was our message. And I just felt like I had a business background to offer, and it was a winning message. So here I am. Yeah. And I'm glad I'm here, though, candidly.
Yeah. So it was one of those cases where it's like, well, I don't really like what's going on, so I'm just going to do it myself. And,
exactly right.
Yeah. So. On the baseball front, so I'm a huge Atlanta Braves fan.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're on the right side.
Yeah. And obviously, you played for them in was it AAA, AA? Mm-hmm. What you played?
I played at all the levels, and had a big league contract in 72 and 73.
Okay.
So I got to play in a lot of spring training games with the big league team, and I got a lot of baseball stories, got Hank Aaron stories, got all kinds of stories.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then when I retired from the Braves, I owned and operated the San Antonio Missions in the Texas League with the Cleveland Indians, and then got into business. My family owns car dealerships, and got into business, and then got into politics. So after meeting then pre-Governor Bush, Texas Rangers, and baseball literally got me into politics.
Man, that's awesome. We could probably spend the entire podcast talking baseball, which would be good. We'll definitely turn back to it, too, as we go forward. So kind of jumping into what's going on right now. Y'all are in recess this week, but next week you're going to be back in session. What is happening on Capitol Hill from a 30,000-foot perspective?
Well, what's happening is nothing, okay? We got sent up by all of us that are up there. 810,000 people sent us up there to do the work, to make our country as good as it can be, and we're not doing it. Impeachment has sucked the air out of everything. You've got House Democrats wanting to overturn an election, for crying out loud, that the people in America, 300 million people, decided they want Donald Trump, or at least try him, right?
Yeah.
And we got another election coming up a year from now in November, and we're going to be able to vote again. But the House Democrats and Nancy Pelosi want to overturn this election. They wanted to do it from day one. And now we're just in a funk. We're not doing anything about trade. USMCA should have been passed a long time ago. It's good for Texas, good for America, good for the world. I've got a school security bill out there that's bipartisan. Ted Deutsch and I have got a bill that protects our teachers and our students in their schools. That should get out. I've got several bipartisan issues, one with Henry Cuellar down at the border to help issues down there on this side of the border.
Sure.
We need to make tax cuts permanent. We haven't even done that. We don't have a budget, for crying out loud. We're talking about CRs. We don't have a budget for the military. So we're doing nothing, which is wrong, and America is being held hostage by these liberals that their hate and anger is so bad for this president, they don't want America to succeed, and it's frustrating.
Yeah. There's a lot there to unpack, and I want to actually, on everything you just touched, I definitely want to individually go into all that, particularly the trade deal and spending, and I know those are big issues for you. On the impeachment issue, which, some people call it a hamster wheel or a shiny object, whatever you want to call it, depending on your perspective. What are your thoughts on the process? I've seen a lot of complaints from Republicans about sort of this closed door process. I don't think either one of the committees you're on has access to.
Right. I'm on financial services, a banking committee.
Yeah.
Right.
So from a personal perspective, are you one of those that's upset with the process and not being able to see what's going on behind closed doors?
I'm upset about it.
Sure.
I'm upset it even started, but the process it's not transparent. Like you said, Republicans, they're making the rules up, the Democrats. We're not in the game. And they're releasing documents that, are questionable. And so forth. All they got to do is go back to the Nixon proceedings and go back to the Clinton proceedings, and there's the rules to follow. Yeah. Both parties were engaged. Both parties were able to ask questions, bring witnesses in, and so forth. But that's not the case now. And I think it's going to blow up in their faces. I think from a political standpoint, they've made a grave, grave mistake, which is good for us. But at the same time, it's going to be a process. It's going to go on. It's ugly. And I'm not so sure when we actually take a vote in the House for impeachment that you're going to have, there are going to be some Democrats, I would think, peel away, because the numbers. I think it's 31 counties in America that Trump had double-digit leads represented by Democrats. They're going to vote to impeach this guy when the people in the county in large numbers want him as president. So we've got a long way to go. And the resolution we voted on the other day, which I voted against, needless to say, was a piece of paper just allows them to keep talking about it. The president was not impeached. And if it goes that far, if there's a vote for impeachment, it goes to Senate. There's not 67 votes in the Senate to remove him. And I actually think at the end of the day, it gives him more momentum to win a year from now, which I believe that if the economy stays like it is and the attitude of people is like it is, we could win 40 states. Yeah.
So Speaker Pelosi, kind of turning to her for a moment, it's interesting because there hasn't been an official impeachment process that's been put forward, right? It's been all behind closed doors or unofficial. An inquiry is how they framed it. Do you think Speaker Pelosi is aware of sort of the potential political pitfalls that could come from an impeachment process? She seemed reticent. Just observing for a long time, she seemed sort of reticent to move forward. Was she dragged into this, or did she consciously make the decision?
I don't think she. I of course can't speak for her, but I don't think she wanted to do this. I mean, she's been around too long to see how it works. Yeah, it's not ugly, and she knows that the president is not going to be removed from office. But I think their party has gone so far left with the four.
The squad
with the four squad.
Yeah,
I think they've pushed her so far left that to protect herself that she did this, and now they're in a quagmire. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see. But like the president said, let's take the vote. Let's check everybody out. See how big everybody is.
Yeah. Do you predict there will be a vote in the House, or do you think it's going to continue to sort of be this unofficial inquiry?
Well, if you're on their side, in my mind, with a year election from now, and you look at the days that we have left to be in office, I think it's like 30-something. Yeah. To be in session, not much time, and I would think they'd want to be in a hurry to get this done. Yeah. So I'm not ready to say we'll make a vote on impeachment. I will say if we do, it probably would pass, more than likely in the House, but it's going nowhere. He's not going to be removed from office. Yeah. So they got to consider all that. And all the time, I had somebody tell me today, California's burning up as we speak. That's her state. Yeah. That's Maxine Waters' state. And they're more involved in impeachment than they are trying to save their state. Yeah. It's amazing.
Well, turning to some of the policies, right, that I think would be important to Californians and obviously important to Texas. You mentioned the USMCA, the NAFTA 2.0 agreement. What's the latest on that? Obviously the House could have acted on it. I'd be curious your thoughts on why that hasn't happened. I assume impeachment.
Well, it hadn't happened. Yeah. Almost even before impeachment, it didn't happen because it was a victory for President Trump. And they don't want him to have any victories. But it's a victory for the world, for America, for Texas. In 2017, $170 billion went from Texas out because of NAFTA. Now, the NAFTA agreement was signed, 25, 30 years ago? Yeah. It's a little long in the tooth. And when the president came, he said, remember, blow up NAFTA? Yep. We don't want to blow up NAFTA. Yeah. NAFTA's good, but we redid NAFTA. And I supported all the way until they put tariffs in it.
Yeah.
I'm against tariffs.
Yeah.
I told the president that. We had a great conversation. Tariffs got removed out of USMCA. So I'm beating the drum for it. We got to get it out there. It's bipartisan. It's going to pass. But it needs to get on the floor. That's just one example of the time and the energy we're wasting with this impeachment that we could be moving America forward. And it all converts to more jobs. When you got more jobs than people right now, lowest unemployment, pretty good deal going on right now.
Yeah. Speaking of tariffs, are you, with regard to what's going on with China, and I know this has been pretty much a hallmark of the president's administration outside of border security, are you concerned with where that sort of trade conflict is? Are you optimistic? What's your view of kind of where things are there?
China, it's kind of backwards, forwards, who did this, who did that. As I said earlier, I'm not a proponent of tariffs. Tariffs are a tax increase. Tariffs raises the cost of goods sold.
Yeah.
I've been very vocal about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think China does not treat us fairly.
Yeah.
We got intellectual property they're stealing from us. It's a bad situation, and I think the president's right on in going after them. Now, all that being said, he's a great negotiator. I think one day that we may wake up and he's going to announce that we won.
Yeah.
And maybe, and this I'm picking numbers out of the air, but maybe we've agreed to 6% tariffs go across the board back and forth. We saved 19%. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But China's having their worst. Their economy is as bad as it's been in a long, long time right now. They're feeling the pinch. But what we don't need are content tariffs between Mexico and Canada that would affect the automobile industry and other things.
Sure.
We don't have that in USMCA, and that's not why I support it. We'll see what happens with China. But I think negotiating with them is fine. But there's a point in time we need to come up with a winner. We'll be the winner. What is it? And let's move on.
Yeah. So for Texas farmers, China is, I believe, the third or fourth largest market for them, and that's largely been cut off. And we've seen, just talking with the Texas Farm Bureau and some of the folks we've reported on it, there's been some concern from farmers and ranchers on the impact it's having on them. Do you think that's, with regard to the administration sort of moving forward with payments, essentially handouts to them, do you think that's something that's sustainable? No. Is it something that you also oppose as well?
Well, it's kind of a bailout.
Yeah. And
I've talked to farmers. The farmers want to compete.
Yeah.
We got the greatest farmers in the world.
Yeah.
We can feed ourselves and feed the world if we get to compete. What was a couple weeks ago the president announced was a $50 billion, which is a big deal when they've only spent in the past 10 to 15 billion. He made that deal, which is good for the farmers on soybeans and so forth. But I think the farmers want to compete. I don't think they want government money. They don't want $12 billion to bail them out. They want to be able to do what they do best. And I think that's where we're heading. I think the president gets that too. We talk to my farmers, though, but it's interesting. You talk to farmers in my district, which we have a lot of rural in our district. Yeah. They support this president. They agree. It's got to be fair. We're getting hammered. Yeah. But it's a fine line, isn't it, to make sure we don't hammer ourselves while we're trying to do it. The president gets that. I think the last couple of weeks he's done a pretty good job of pulling back. And, of course, the $50 billion deal was a big deal to all of us. Yeah. And speaking of the economy, too, obviously the job market is booming. The economy is doing very well. Obviously, the tax reform package that was pushed through a couple of years ago, you were a big proponent. You were leading on that, as I recall. Looking at where the economy is now compared to where our national debt is, how concerned should people be that we just crossed that $23 trillion threshold with how well the economy is doing? Is that a looming sort of landmine for us that we need to be aware of? Okay. The debt, in my opinion, is the most serious crisis we have. And when you talk to the generals, they'll tell you it's not Russia, it's not China, it's the debt. They're worried about the debt. $23 trillion and going up $1 trillion a year, it's not sustainable. Unfortunately, there's people of both parties that have no appetite to do anything but cutting expenses. I come from a business. If I have a business that loses $1,000, I cut $1,000. I don't go borrow $1,000. Families, your listeners, families the same way. Small businesses that way. We have a budget. We don't even have a budget, you see. So the debt is a serious, serious thing. The Democrats will blame tax cuts on that. Tax cuts are causing the deficit. Tax cuts are not causing a deficit. It's spending that's causing a deficit. Sure. You've got to separate the two. The reason the economy is so good is because we have cut taxes. We put more cash flow in America, more cash flow in Main Street. When businesses make money, they don't save money. They spend money on manpower, on equipment, on expansion. That's what we see now. We need to cut taxes even more
Yeah.
I want to cut the cap gains and the dividends back down to 15, maybe even index the capital gains. We got to make these tax cuts permanent. I'd like to take the pass-throughs at 29% and bring them down to C Corp rate at 21%. We need to do all that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got to get serious about cutting expenses. When you talk about cutting expenses, I would be supportive of cutting the Department of Education.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
But that's $58 billion. That's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah.
We could cut we're all 10th Amendment believers. We could pass everything to the states and let the government collect my taxes, defend my borders, help me with the infrastructure, and get out of our way. But we still got to cut the spending. And you got to get into Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. There's ways to do that that does not break the promise that we've made to our senior citizens, of which I'm one of them. Okay? But the debt is serious. The interesting thing about the debt, we are in a period of time of very low interest rates. Okay? I'm of the generation, I remember 20% interest. We did business at 20% interest.
Yeah.
And if you could have a 6% interest rate, that's perfect. I mean, you could borrow, you could save. 6% was always a good rate.
Yep.
Now we have these 2 and 3% rates, and you guys, if it goes up to 3.5%, you're freaking out. Interest is getting so high, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if interest went to 6%, which is still a good rate, you'd have close to 70% of your GDP would be on interest on this debt.
Wow.
70%.
Wow.
If you have 70% of your GDP in interest, you don't have a military. You don't have roads and bridges. You don't have the things we're used to. So it's got to stop. And I would say to all your listeners and all your followers, they should be asking people like me, everybody that comes to their groups and talks, what are you going to do about the debt?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk. I talk about it all the time because I'm a business guy. I know what debt can do to a balance sheet.
Yeah.
And we're out of control. And, if we could cut $1 trillion a year right now, then 23 years from now, these kids that are just born today, that are getting out of grad school at the University of Texas, would have a debt-free America.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
But the other thing, too, is we mislead people by talking about balancing budgets. We talk about we're going to balance the budget in 10 years. Well, nobody can go to a bank and get that done. You balance in 10 years, they don't tell you they're balancing by drawing on the line of credit. So in the 10th year, they don't own 23, they own 33, but they're balanced for one day. So we're misleading America.
Yeah.
I'm a business guy. I want to cut expenses. I want to cut taxes, create more cash flow. I want to cut expenses and create more net worth.
Yeah.
I've got to get some help on that.
So there's so much to jump into on this. And I'm glad you touched on, I want to get into the mandatory and discretionary and to nerd out a little bit.
Got it.
Apologize for that. But I think it's important. On the discretionary side of spending, you've got this sort of unspoken, at least this is what I observed as a staffer on the Hill. You've got this sort of unspoken alliance between Republicans who rightly want to ensure our military is ready and able to win
exactly.
wars. And then Democrats who want to spend a lot of money on the domestic side of the equation. And they seem to sort of work together, and we bust through the caps and the spending levels continue. How does that process from a Republican concerned about the debt and the security threat that poses to our military, how do you break through that logjam?
Well, that's a good question because every time we talk about buying more F-35s, we get threatened by North Korea, Iran, you name it.
Yeah.
Then everybody wants to buy more homeless people's cell phones.
Yeah.
They're two different things.
Yeah.
But there again, it's a situation where one side doesn't want the other side to win. How do you break through it? I don't know. But I guarantee you, we agree on more things than people may think we agree. If we get through this anger, we ought to be able to sit down and sell the military and make a deal of some sort. I'm in the car business, okay?
Yeah.
I know how to make deals.
Yeah.
If I get a little of that, you get a little of that, okay? It's not either or if you agree to disagree, I don't agree with you. We got to sit down, and here's what I need for the military, Mr. and Mrs. Liberal. Here's what you want for domestic. There's a way to make it happen. And how you could do it and how you do it in business, okay, let's spend domestically, let's spend militarily. Okay, then let's cut expenses somewhere else. Let's cut out the Department of Education. Let's cut out the Department of Commerce. Let's cut out the Department of Energy. Let's cut all those to help pay for this. You see?
Yeah.
And we need that kind of dialogue, but we don't have it because nobody wants to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And that's what's killing our country and makes it hard and frustrating for somebody like me that's used to making a deal.
So on these sort of spending deals, and I know you've railed against continuing resolutions and typically oppose that sort of process of automatically continuing sort of where we're at on a spending front. People who saw Republicans with sort of full control of Congress for years, and obviously there was 2 years where it was full GOP control, White House, Senate, and yet the deficits continued. Right. Why should people, I guess, trust the Republican Party to be able to do that?
No, it's great.
Right?
I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
Why should they?
Yeah.
Because we've been as bad as everybody else.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to step in. Somebody's got to step in, and we got to cut expenses.
Yeah.
Now you can start talking about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid that drives a lot of this, okay? And I can talk to you about that.
Sure.
But somebody's got to be willing to step up there. I'm telling you, when I talk about, everybody says, well, if I talk about that, I won't get elected. That's garbage. When I talk about that to young people and so forth, I mean, I'm getting elected. I'm running hard. People pretty much get it.
Yeah.
But like I said earlier, you can't cut out all the departments. People talk about that. That goes nowhere. You've got to cut the spending. So if we're going to be $1 trillion short this next year, what would you do in your house? You'd get your family and say, we got to cut $1 trillion. We need to cut $1 trillion.
Yeah.
Stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Stop it right there. So 2 years from now, our deficit is $23 trillion. 3 years from now, it's $23 trillion. Just stop it. Okay? Cut taxes, create more cash flow, create more jobs, and then pretty soon you can say, you know what? We got a couple billion here. We can play against the $23 trillion. Reduce it.
Yeah.
Not that hard.
Yeah.
Believe me.
Yeah. Well, it's with the current dynamic, I'd be curious, do you think it's harder with divided government to do this, or is it easier with one party in control or not?
Well, people always said, you've learned in school and everything, divided government's the best government.
Yeah.
Checks and balances.
Yeah.
And that's probably worked pretty good when people had their wits about them.
Sure.
When they look at when you and I are driven about disagreement. In other words, you're a big government guy, I'm not. We can talk about that. But when you just hate me, or you hate that other person, you block out, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
So divided government right now is not the best government.
Yeah.
Because we're getting nothing done. I mean, conservatives like we all are, we're just playing defense right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the best play, and that's what I'm doing is playing defense.
Yeah. So switching gears slightly, the Army Futures Command has big deal come to Austin. Rebuilding the military, I know, is a big part of your pitch and one of your policy passions. What should we expect from Austin now hosting the Army Futures Command and the R&D that's going to come out of that? Both from Texas, what kind of impact does this have on just the economy of Texas and moving forward, but also on our military capability and readiness?
Well, it's a huge deal for Austin to have this.
Yeah.
And they worked really hard to get it, and I represent Fort Hood also, and I think the proximity to Fort Hood and Austin would just really a no-brainer for the military. We already got a lot of jobs coming in here. It's there not to find how to win the war tomorrow, but how to win the war 50, 60, 100 years from now.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So it's a big deal. It's going to grow. Austin should be proud that they have Army Futures here. General Murray's doing a fantastic job. It's just it puts Austin in a position where Austin can eventually look back and say, hey, we had a lot to do with protecting our country from freedom and liberty and fighting against the enemy and making sure they were defeated.
Yeah. So, military readiness, where it's at, what do you think are the challenges right now that maybe are not being discussed as sort of the larger political conversation is on impeachment and, these various political battles? What in the defense world should we be concerned about? What should we be looking to address that maybe we're not?
Well, I mean, I think we have to realize that the oceans no longer separate us. And we have a lot of people out there that don't like us.
Yeah.
We're the first ones they come see, but they don't like us.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that. And we have to understand that if the United States military is not the most prominent, strongest military in the world's going to implode. Yeah. It's going to implode. And under Barack Obama, we began to see that when he cut $1 trillion out of the military, and we couldn't fly jets, we couldn't sail our ships, we couldn't train our men. We saw that. Now we've been able to put 750 back in, and we're training again. We're doing various things we do to protect freedom and liberty. But unless Americans realize that America has to be the strongest country socially, economically, and militarily, the world's going to implode.
Yeah.
You see? And we just saw a couple weeks ago with al-Baghdadi, how good we are.
Yeah.
How good we are to go in there and get him, save 11 children, save a military dog, and we got home.
Have you met the dog?
I can't tell you that. I can show you what he looks like, but I can't tell you his name.
It's classified.
But what I'm saying is because China wants to take our position in the world.
Yeah.
They want to take it economically, and they want to take it militarily. There was a time under Obama we didn't have ships in the Pacific. I mean, that's where the action is. There were times we were having to, take parts from boneyard to put on planes to keep them flying. It's unbelievable stories. Just in Fort Hood alone, for instance, our barracks were falling down and we're condemned. Our barracks.
Yeah.
And kids were sleeping on the ground. Now I've got $65 million. We're rebuilding the barracks. They're great, you see.
Yeah.
But so we have to understand, if we're not strong militarily in the world, everything we've enjoyed, our parents, our kids, our grandkids, is going to be gone, because you don't reach back and get freedom and liberty back again after you've lost it. You keep it by a strong military, okay, and staying out of debt.
Yeah. Do you think China is arguably the number one sort of hostile threat to the United States on the global stage?
I think so, probably. The experts would tell you they're not really worried about the Russians.
Yeah.
The Russians don't want to fight us. I mean, their economy's in the tank, and Iran is a real problem. North Korea is a problem.
Sure.
China's a problem. Iran and North Korea, their leaders are somewhat crazy.
Yeah.
And they could just go crazy one night and start a world war.
Yeah.
China probably won't do that. China is going to try to continue to go at us with our economy. That's why we need to have a strong economy, so they can't get there. China. We need to keep China from buying our intellectual property. We need to keep China from buying all our real estate. You see?
Yeah.
So I think that at the end of the day, China would probably be. But look if tonight the Ayatollah decide he'd do something with Israel, and Kim Jong-un decide he'd do something with Seoul, well, then they'd be on our list.
Yeah.
They'd be the most important thing on our list.
Wow.
So that's how close we are. That's why we need a strong military. And President Trump has done that, but we need to do more. We need a budget. We need to get off CRs. The generals will tell you, please don't put us on another CR.
Yeah.
They don't want that. But we can't get there because we can't get a budget, because we can't agree on anything. Yeah. We're taking our soldiers and putting them up against people that, are requiring more maintenance than those with a job.
Yeah.
And that's not right.
Yeah, I remember former Secretary Mattis, I think he testified in front of the Senate. I mean, this was 2 or 3 years ago. He said the national debt is the number one threat to our nation. Still kind of sticking on China a little bit. There's been a lot of concern from some folks about American companies sort of genuflecting towards China. We saw LeBron James, the NBA, kind of dust up where you had, the GM for the Houston Rockets was standing with people in Hong Kong. What do you make of all that, with sort of these big American companies sort of kind of winking at the Chinese?
Well, they're winking at him, but one thing, our tax cuts have brought a lot of them back. Okay?
Okay.
As far as the NBA players, they just don't know history.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the bottom line. You look at this, they make their money in America because of freedom and liberty. Right? And do they not know China's killing people?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
They don't know history. They need to learn history. They need to come back and thank the American taxpayer and our soldiers for creating an environment so they can make these millions of dollars. I was excited today to see the Washington Nationals went to the lawn of the White House, and they all were there, except maybe one.
Yep.
And they complimented the president on making America great.
Yeah.
I thought that's fabulous. Me being a baseball guy, I remind everybody, baseball players don't take a knee.
Yeah.
So, but if we create an environment, a tax environment, low regulation environment, businesses coming to America. That's what we want to have happen.
Yeah.
They employ people. And then we need to know history on these other countries don't think like we do.
Yeah.
And I wish the NBA would teach history to those players.
Yeah. And on the security front as well, the border is still a huge issue. We've been covering it nonstop. I know you've been all over it as well. Congressman Chip Roy talks a lot about it as well. Where are we in that border crisis, where I think the apprehension numbers were double this year what they were last year? What do you make of that, and also the administration's efforts to try to curb the problem? Where are we kind of at on that issue?
Well, I think he's doing the right thing and try to curb this problem of people coming over between the ports and not through the ports. I mean, sovereignty is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I think that we're a welcoming country. I, for one, I want everybody, when you see these people down at the border, I want every one of them to realize the American dream, but they have to do it right. We have laws, and we cannot forget this is a land of laws. And if you break the law, then you got to pay. And you take somebody like me, put my hand in the Bible and swear to uphold the Constitution. The Constitution says there's a way to be a citizen. There's a way to come in here legally. And if you don't, you're breaking the law, and you basically got to go back. I've always been a proponent. I never really was a big proponent of the wall. To me, a wall was boots on the ground. I always wanted 5,000 more Border Patrol. People doing business with people is a big deal. You're going to have technology. You're going to have brick and mortar and somewhere and so forth. But I think, we have the greatest country in the world. People want to come over and realize the dream. But they got to do it right, you see. So I think the president called everybody's attention to it. We've made some strides down there. I've been at the border a lot, talking to those border agents. We need to pray for these people every single day. They're overwhelmed. But I think we could do some things like making it easier to get through the ports of entry. We need to tell people that just because you're here doesn't mean you're here, because we got people down there saying these coyotes, they come up there and think if you touch it, kind of like wet foot, dry foot, you're a citizen.
Yeah.
They're not. And you've got all the drug problems going on down there that people forget about. I was down there 1 week, and the Border Patrol told me $67 million in that 1 week went from coyotes to people trying to get in.
Oh, my gosh.
And like I say, the drugs and all that sort of thing. So we have to secure the border. We have to do what other countries do, right?
Yeah.
Other countries won't let you come in like this.
Yeah.
We have to know who's here. And it gets back to things we talked about from day one. English needs to be the official language. And we're putting a heavy burden on our schools and our teachers. It's costing our smaller communities in my district a lot of money to take care of those that are here illegally.
Oh, wow.
That people don't think about. We just need to get a handle on the border issue, put more boots on the ground, and probably have more judges to make it go through quicker with the courts and that sort of thing. And bottom line, make people come through the ports of entry, not between. We're a land of law. Let's adhere to the laws. And let's bring people in here, and let's let them enjoy this great country and realize the American dream.
Yeah.
But not break the law.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot, you mentioned a lot of it, a lot of the problems.
Sanctuary cities. I mean, who the heck thought of this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there's some communities, as you know, that are declaring themselves sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment, for example.
Yes. We've been covering that nonstop. I think we're up to 7 or 8 counties in Texas have now done that.
Yeah.
And what do you make of that particular link with sanctuary cities and our kind of our porous border? The drug cartels in Mexico are operating pretty much with impunity. You've got an opioid crisis, which I think the media, saying that with some self-awareness, the legacy media has pushed this idea that it's overprescription from drugs, but a lot of the drugs that are coming across the border in the opioid crisis, the cartels themselves are pushing onto our streets. How do we actually get a hold of this from a policy perspective on shutting down sanctuary cities so they're not distribution centers for all these illicit narcotics?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is they're breaking the law to begin with. I mean, they can't turn their nose to the federal government like it's already breaking the law.
Sure.
I think the president, to think about how can we get a handle, how can we get their attention, right? Well, he talked about cutting off federal funding to some of these places. That would get their attention. No more, they don't have any funding for the fire department, whatever.
Sure.
And that's the kind of thing that gets their attention, and he's been pretty good about doing it. But it's funny, on these sanctuary cities, San Francisco, L.A. got all these illegals and these homeless people, but they don't want them, Pelosi don't want them in her district. Maxine doesn't want them in her district. But the president says, let's take them all up there and see how they like it. No, don't bring them up here. So I think you have to, again, cities, like people, have to adhere to the law. Yeah. If you don't adhere to the law, you can't get the benefits. Yeah. Pure and simple. It's kind of like what we're doing with squeezing some of our enemies. I mean, right? Sure. So if you want to be a sanctuary city, then you probably get your own police cars, get your own fire truck. Yeah. Get your own schools going. Have you followed at all what's going on here in Austin with the homeless ordinance and the camping? Well, that's a local issue. Yeah. But I'm familiar with. I talked to Governor Abbott the other day about it, and you merely have to go through Austin to see the travesty. Yeah. Of a great town, of a great city. Yeah. I've had people call me, even from some of the businesses around here, and saying, "I can't get my customers in. We can't show people our business." Yeah, because of the homeless people. Now, we all feel for the homeless people, but aside from mental illness, which a lot of it is, there's some people who go out and get a job too. Let's just be honest about it. Yeah, get to work, get a paycheck, get a place to live. It's a great time. The economy is as good as it's ever been.
Yeah.
But I don't think you promote tent cities and that sort of thing. And I think that's what Governor Abbott's taking care of now.
Yeah. I think today they just started, Texas Department of Transportation just started stepping in and trying to clear out from under the overpasses a lot of these encampments and all.
Right.
It's just, there's so much that goes into sort of these sanctuary policies, whether it's, we're a sanctuary city for homelessness or illegal immigration. And it's interesting to bring up the idea of sort of blocking federal funds to sort of punish. Yeah. Is that something
if you're going to break the law, which they're doing,
sure,
why should we give them taxpayers' dollars any more than we should send taxpayers' dollars overseas to people that want our demise?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to send money to my political opponent.
I was going to ask, do you think this is, if the GOP were to regain, let's say next year, the House, would that be something that Congress would contemplate and move forward, a bill or a provision that would say, all right, we're cracking down on sanctuary cities. This is the approach we're going to take.
I think that absolutely would happen.
Yeah.
There's a lot to get done that's just stalemated. But I think if you're going to break the law, we're a land of law. If you're going to break the law, then you need to pay the consequences.
Yeah.
And, the courts are, you talk about the courts. You got some liberal courts out there that throwing the Constitution in the wastebasket. But the president's getting, we're appointing a lot of judges right now.
Yeah.
And so forth. And the courts are important to conservatives. We control the courts right now. We need to keep it that way.
Yeah. Well, let's switch it up from sort of the policy political front. I want to turn first and foremost, what are your thoughts on the World Series?
Great World Series.
Yep.
I told everybody 2 weeks out in it was going to be Astros in 6.
Oh, wow.
And after Washington won it, I projected Astros in 9. but look at the Astros have a great team. The Yankees had all these teams were good. Atlanta was good.
Yeah, they were.
Okay, but the Nationals were an interesting story because the story at the All-Star break. They were 12, 13 games below 500.
Yep.
They were going to fire Martinez.
Yep.
And they were going to unload all their good players that were free agents and rebuild.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden after the All-Star break, they had the best record in baseball.
Yeah. And
the rest is history. So I think if you're a Texan, you love the Astros, not good.
Yep.
But the Astros are going to be around for a long time. From a baseball standpoint, I think it's really great to have the world champions in Washington right now.
Yeah.
They hadn't won since 1924. They hadn't been in a World Series since 1933. Okay.
Oh, wow.
And it came to Washington, and not since Walter Johnson, who was pitching in 24, did they win.
Yeah.
So, and there's a movie called The Damn Yankees, and that's all about how the Yankees always beat Washington.
Yep.
And so it was good for baseball. And I was glad today what I heard about what happened in the White House about the players standing up for the president.
Yeah.
And so forth. So great World Series. Now they're going to be I think they got 3 major free agents they got to deal with, so we'll see what their team looks like. And, of course, they were all excited that they won because the headlines always there was Harperless.
Yes. I was going to ask you about that.
Harperless.
How does he feel?
But Soto took his place.
Yeah, that's right.
21 years old.
Yeah.
Great player.
Yeah. Very good.
And maybe a better hitter than Harper.
Yeah.
So, it worked out good he got a lot of money, and it worked out good for the Nats.
I remember when...
Because they were paying the kid the minimum.
Oh, yeah. So, well, it's funny, too, because I remember when Harper first started, with the Nats. I'd been up in Washington for a couple of years, but everyone had this, Strasburg and Bryce Harper. And then it's only after Harper's moved on that they finally win a World Series. It's so ironic. It's just hard to describe, particularly from that fan base's perspective.
But it was a great 7th game. It's good for baseball.
Yeah. Is it the only World Series where not a single home team won a game?
Never happened before.
That's crazy.
So there was no home field advantage.
Yeah. That's just crazy to think about. Baseball is just, again, we could do a whole podcast on baseball, and I'd love to do that. But baseball, I think, is beautiful in the sense that we've gotten to a place, the Royals have won recently. Mm-hmm. You've got these sort of smaller franchises that are not only competing, Milwaukee, right? They're winning.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy for the game. Yeah. It's a little bit different, I think, than the NFL. And
no, they're totally different. Yeah. The fan base is different.
Yep.
Not the fan base, but you watch a football game, the college or pro. The people are cheering and this and that. You watch a baseball game, how many people do you see there are praying? They had the hand over their face. They were totally living the moment, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
They've got tears going down. They're pulling for their team. It's a different environment.
Yep.
Two different games. And baseball has no time limit. All the sports are going too long. You know, I was at a game the other day, and it was 5.5 hours of football game.
Oh, wow.
You know, so
Which game was that?
it was a TCU game.
Okay. Oh.
And you know, all stopped for you know, all the
commercials
and everything.
Yeah.
So, but it's just two different games, and one is heavy metal, as I say it.
Yeah.
The other's more family based.
Yeah. Would you, down the road in the future, would you ever consider going back and just full time trying to coach a baseball team or getting back into that world?
Well, you know, I was the coach at TCU for 3 years and then did some managing professionally. I loved it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You know, I've often thought if I had to start all, if everything I had done was done now,
Yeah.
that I might go back to TCU and suit up and help work them out and hit
Nice.
infield before the games and all
Nice.
that. You know, I can do it. But I really love doing what I'm doing now, being in Congress.
Yeah.
And we got a lot of our colleagues that are leaving, as you know, that served greatly. People ask me how long I'm staying. I'm staying in. I told the president I'm going to stay in as long as until we make tax cuts permanent.
There you go.
So anyway, I'm in for the long pull. He doesn't need anybody quitting on him right now, so I'm with him.
Are you still going to be the coach of the congressional baseball team?
I'm
for
the
Republicans?
manager
You're, all right.
of the congressional baseball team, and I enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
And I had fun the other night with a reporter. He asked me, he says, Congressman, are you going to continue to, are you thinking about getting in leadership? And I said, well, I am in leadership. I said, I'm the manager of the congressional baseball team. I said, it puts me fifth in line to be speaker. And he wrote it down. So we're hoping that comes out published somewhere.
We'll be looking for that. That's hilarious.
But, no, you know, the baseball game up there is a big deal. I don't know if you've been, but I'd love to have you've been. Of course you have.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, last year, 30,000 people. We should have won it last year. We made 2 errors right there at the end. But 30,000 people, $1.5 million, $1.6 million raised for charity.
Yep.
And it is it's a big deal. Both sides want to win. And it's kind of like, I tell people, it's kind of like the version of Texas, Oklahoma, TCU, Baylor.
Yeah.
You know, about a week or two in advance, the campus is already starting to feel it.
Yep.
And it's the same thing you get about 2 weeks before the game, people are starting to feel it.
Yeah.
You know, we got to win this game, and you guys better get to bed early and this and that. So it's a neat deal.
It is. It really is. And for
folks, been played like 110 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
We've got pictures from in my office. I got a picture of Congressman Longworth.
No way.
Hitting in the 1910 game. And then I got a picture of Speaker Longworth with the 2 captains in 1934 of the game.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is
so it goes
else.
back, I think it's been played 110 years. So.
Yeah. That's
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It's a cool tradition. I mean, it's always a fun time out for folks who are up there. And if you ever get the opportunity, you should go watch the congressional baseball game.
Exactly.
It's great.
Go. Yeah.
And there's some pretty good athletes out there.
Well, there are some.
Really
the Democrats' average age is probably going to be around 45. Mm-hmm. Our average age is probably going to be around 60, 63.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference.
Yeah.
But we start March 1st, and we go every morning, and we're from 5:30 to 7.
Wow.
I work them out. They work out hard, and I tell people the idea that you get, let's say, 65-year-old men to come out get up every morning at 5:30, work out till 7, baseball, just like they were in high school.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
And if you come, I can point out to you all the guys out there that I could tell you 40 or 50 years ago they could play.
Yeah.
And I can tell you something, they never were any good. But awesome. I mean, think about that. Yeah. That means a lot. I mean, you got guys that we have major hearings going on. Mm-hmm. We're running for re-election, but they're out there every morning at 5:30. We're doing our thing
for a good cause too.
For a great cause.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I got one last question for you. Thanksgiving's coming up. What traditions do y'all have for Thanksgiving? What's like on the menu, on the plate? What's in the Williams household?
Well,
what can people look
we've
for?
got a small family, so we keep it all together. Okay, but we usually we didn't do it last year, but we all run it. We get a turkey trot, right? You got to run the turkey trot, 5K, and so we'll all run it. So you got Dad running it with his daughters. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
and then green bean casserole. You got to have that.
It's essential,
right?
Yes.
And then
can you tell my wife that?
Yeah. And then we, like everybody, we do take time to thank our blessings. My family's been blessed beyond belief, and with health and opportunity to do things and so forth. So we don't forget that. But it's all about the turkey trot and green bean casserole.
Yeah. Man, that sounds good.
I mean, I have to, full disclosure, I have to give it to you.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I'm really hungry all of a sudden. Well, Congressman, this has been a pleasure. We appreciate you coming in, stopping by, telling us what's going on. Good to see you. And we appreciate just the insight into everything that's happening up there. I think it's really important for our readers, for our listeners, and for folks that are going to be watching online. So we appreciate all you guys, obviously, as always, and we will catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening. If you've been enjoying our podcast, it would be awesome if you would review us on iTunes. And if there's a guest you'd love to hear on our show, give us a shout out on Twitter. Tweet @TheTexanNews. We're proud to have you standing with us as we seek to provide real journalism in an age of disinformation. We're paid for exclusively by readers like you, so it's important we all do our part to support The Texan by subscribing and telling your friends about us. God bless you, and God bless Texas.